Great. Yeah. So as Mr. Jorgensen had explained, it's been a pretty neck-breaking year. And I know at the beginning of the year we talked about 2020 really being setting the stage for growth. And what that means is taking stuff that was really kind of more in theory or theoretical and moving it into true practice. And for those that don't know, I'm involved in a lot of blockchain projects, consortia, different academia groups. And so I spend quite a bit of time week by week getting on the phone with folks and just kind of sharing war stories about what's happening in the market. And it helps me as a BD guy who really focuses on go to market to just know that, hey, are we in an echo chamber here? Are we experiencing in the market what others are that are at the level of maturity from a technology that resonates with where Constellation is at? One of the things I think that our team is rather humble and shy about is that we had a huge launch when it came to mainnet this year. We're one of less than a dozen networks, blockchain networks in the world. And that matters when we're talking thousands of crypto projects that you're looking at on CoinMarketCap or anywhere else. It really comes down to us trying to force the narrative over like, hey, let's pull back the project and look at the guts. Is there real technology there? And that's what I've been really pushing hard this year is getting on the phone with not only a lot of constituents from a BD perspective and seeing, hey, where are you hitting roadblocks? What is the market sentiment? What's happening in different industries, because some are more mature than others. And that has been very telling. And so when you think about us going from a year of research to growth is how do we apply this? And to kind of fast forward through the whole process, not bore you through all the different levers that we pull in order to get an enterprise or federal engagement excited and finding that champion. The roadblocks really come at DevOps. DevOps has been one of the areas that we've noticed when it comes to go to market with either a pilot or a proof of concept and moving that into production. It really starts getting wrapped around the axle around DevOps. And I only mention that because that's important for us to start wrapping our head around the utility and application around Hypergraph versus it just being something that's going to be the communication standard for the future. While that's very lovely as a vision, we're starting to really come from that 30,000 foot view down to where the rubber meets the road. And for those that don't know what DevOps is, development operations, which really, okay, you have a solution. How do you get it to insert it or find entry points to integrate it into your workflow to create value? And so one of the things that was very attractive with the federal government working with us, and that's one of our requirements, is that we're not allowed to make any changes to existing IT infrastructure. And so I want that to really sink in for folks. Think about that. We're talking about an emerging solution that really changes the entire landscape of how data is securely communicated. And for folks to absorb it, it doesn't require them to learn how to code a smart contract in Scala, to learn how to build a protocol from scratch and understand all the underlying rules. So I just want to give a big shout out to Wyatt and what the engineering team has really put forth in their strong mission statement around making a very elastic, flexible tool so that when we get to those DevOps conversation, which is like, great, you guys have a valuable solution that we want to implement into our workflow to realize a value on the other side. Are we going to have to hire 14 new blockchain teams to be able to make it happen? Or are you able to communicate with our engineering team that's working within existing data management solutions that they've already invested in, that we can just keep moving within our sprints without having to create new disciplines? And that's really what ends up killing a lot of software deals for those that understand traditional SaaS, which is the rip and replace or migration of a discipline sometimes can kill the workflow altogether. So that's been a huge focus for us, and really making sure that we're looking at, hey, how do we take these conversations? Because I'm going to be very frank with everybody on the phone here. There's been a lot of projects that, unfortunately, I've gotten down to the 10-yard line and they just die. And we've had to look at that. And that's why those constituents in other areas we've wanted to talk to about why that happens. And it is that DevOps. We have to start speaking their language more effectively. And we've turned that corner. So kind of going back to the year of growth, we were able to show what it takes from end to end to take a project or take a concept make it make sense with the champion on the other side that gets excited and wants to push it over the finish line. And now we're moving into 2021, which is the year of scale. So you think about, okay, we got that one little idea around a playbook, if you will, or a framework. How do we make this one to many? Because I'm going to come straight out and say, Constellation's not interested in being a services company. We're not in the business of being a scalable consulting company. That's not saying that we're not going to do consulting and services early on to get that flywheel going. But we're really aiming at a one-to-many vision, which is how do we work with the world-class system integrators? And that would be folks like Accenture or Deloitte or PwC, these folks that have built practices around certain capabilities that are looking for new solutions that are going to give them a leg up. And we're not talking an incremental leg up where it's just like, great, we're able to process transactions 3% faster, but things that literally change the game. And a lot of those things that are forcing the game to change are coming upon us due to a lot of growing regulations, bulk data creation, changes in the environment. I mean, think about how many people are working from home now. And so all of a sudden, industries are having to be agile to find new capabilities to be able to meet those new demands in the market. And so that one-to-many is our vision. And I really want that to sink in with the community is, okay, there's groups within the federal government like LMI, SES, CGI, of course, they're all three-letter acronyms, but these are the flavors of folks that are ex-military that see promises in emerging blockchain solutions or AI solutions or machine learning solutions. And they know the hurdles and red tape that you have to jump through within the federal space. And so we're partnering with those folks to break down those barriers. And I'm not going to lie, it's been really nice going from being the guy that's knocking on doors trying to get people's attention to us pivoting over to being kind of the hot girl in the room. That's what we keep saying is like, wow, it went from hardcore outbound efforts to now we're seeing inbound efforts. I would say at least once or twice a month, I get interest from a third party that we've never even really talked to that's interested in including us in one of their efforts because blockchain is a key capability within a larger solution as a mission critical component. So I know I'm talking just kind of open here, but I just wanted to kind of enrich folks in the business side here because that's often the area that I've seen across these projects get overlooked. Everybody gets hooked up on the token price. They get hooked up on, are you partnered with somebody big like Tesla or PayPal? And I'm not saying those names aren't important, but you got to understand that the commercial maturity of some of these big solutions that are currently being traded in the traditional stock market are having to take a step back and look towards those partnerships and strategic alignments we've made with partners that may not quite make sense from a foundational perspective. And when I talk about those existing data management tools, that's why you see names like Mongo, God bless them, and some of these other major cloud providers like a Cloudera or a Databricks, Snowflake. You'll hear these names that traditionally don't get thrown around when it comes to the engagement or application layer, because these are infrastructure tools that the entire world relies on to take, very complex systems and stacks and make them usable and effective in market needs. So I just wanted to frame up as between now and the end of the year, I'm very happy to hear that we're going to be sprinkling out a few announcements here and there, and we're not going to be slowing down on those going into Q1 of next year. And I apologize that I haven't done a great job of exposing a lot of the work that I've been doing over the last 6 months, and that's something I'm dedicated to changing. That said, while I am going to be putting a lot of effort and focus on these strategic partnerships and alignments with standard folks and different universities and consortia, understand that that's the binding standards foundational framework that the U.S. Air Force looks to as a requirement to even work with us. So as we move into first quarter of 2021, I'm going to start putting a lot of effort and emphasis on the U.S. Air Force looks to as a requirement to even work with us. So as we move into first quarter of 2021, I'm going to start putting a lot of effort and emphasis on the ecosystem around Hypergraph 2.0. And what that means is, again, foundational partnerships that allow us to grow. Now we're looking to scale since we have a lot of these relationships in place that we'll disclose over the next several weeks to a couple months here. And then we're going to be moving into Hypergraph 2.0, which is really around state channels. And I know I keep using the term state channels. We're a state channel company. And I'm going to just come out and say we haven't done a great job as a company of educating you all on what state channels are. I'm not going to lie. It took me a better half of the my first half of my tenure at Constellation to really demystify some of the beauty that Wyatt has put forth. I'm going to come out and say I'm not a data engineer, but at this point, I'm pretty much an honorary engineer. I've learned so much, but I've learned enough to know that what we have is something very special. Blockchain really exploded because of smart contracts. Don't get me wrong, the immutable nature of Bitcoin, the notarization of transactions and validation and encryption of transactions, very powerful stuff that really opened up people's minds. And then boom, smart contracts come out, allowing for the orchestration of multiple parties, multiple technologies, multiple users within an ecosystem that is run by a distributed ledger. However, everyone here knows, or at least should know, that smart contracts kind of have a limitation, and they hit their renaissance rather early. And while I think that Ethereum is doing a great job of riding that renaissance out, it hasn't really peaked beyond what its capabilities were out of the gate. And so one of the things I mentioned in Telegram a little while ago is that I like to, and I'm trying to up-level it so we're not using such granular, hardcore technology speak moving into 2021. That's on us, and it's up to us to get out of that and start to make this very easy, whether that's metaphors or analogies. And one of the things I said in Telegram was that our state channels are like smart contract, the superheroes of smart contracts. And that's really what got us into the US Air Force, was around our ability to deploy state channels in a very meaningful way. So start to allow your brain, and I don't expect everybody to like get their head wrapped around it right now. And again, we have a lot of educating we have to do to ramp up to Hypergraph 2.0 and why state channels are really going to blow Ethereum out of the water and be the backbone of modern development in blockchain. But I will say that just get used to the idea that what state channels do is very interchangeable with smart contracts, but there's a lot more depth. So when you think about smart contracts being able to cryptographically secure ledger ballots, we're able to cryptographically secure the contents within that and apply different levels of security within the contents of that ledger. And that really applies deeply when we look at our work that we're doing, say, in the federal space, where the moving of data is less concerned to them around it being IP. Oh, if this data gets leaked, there goes our IP, somebody's going to steal our ideas and make money and we're going to be out of business, but rather high security threats. They want to ensure that if something that is at top secret clearance level, it certainly cannot be put on some random thumb drive or passed across the internet, or whatnot. Can't be put on Facebook. And so therefore, they're looking to groups like us as like, okay, how do we take the promise of blockchain and that immutability and that true hard notarization at the source and employ that against all this streaming data we got coming in that has a whole variance levels of different security clearance. And by us coming into that, they said, this could be a game changer for us. And they're willing to triple down on exploring how we're going to unlock this capability. So that, hey, guess what? Maybe top secret data can go across Facebook. And I know that sounds like a wild thing, but that truly shows the power of HGTP. So I think that just kind of like to zoom out a little bit here, because I know I'm covering a lot. We're going from a year of growth to a year of scale. I understand how those seem a little bit different. Think about the seed spawning and then us replicating it into a farm. That way, so we're not having to handhold every project that we do because it'll burn us out, let's be honest. And so a big part of that is how do we shift our messaging from Hypergraph 1.0, which was our ability to really launch the Molly wallet, which has been an awesome success, and a big shout out to everyone that pushed that effort, to Lattice being something that shows how we're going to redefine decentralized finance. When it comes to taking on Ethereum and some of their inefficiencies in the existing model. And so now we're pivoting over to 2021, which is I want to start seeing people get excited and start doing bounties around the art of what's possible around state channels. And while I still feel like that's going to be foggy for a hot minute, when I start rolling out in January of next year, showing the true use cases and how to define this, it's going to hopefully get those light bulbs to go off, and we're going to start to cultivate a lot of new ideas. So I know I've covered a lot here. It's weird kind of just talking without somebody saying something back, but I just want to ask Ben, I know that you may have some thoughts here, but do you have anything you want to share before I continue?
Nope, I'll kind of share the update on Tuesday, and I'll let you drive it. You're the wizard here, man. Thank you.
Wow. I will say I want to give a big shout out to Ben Jorgensen. He, he's the reason I'm here and brought me into blockchain, and he's helped me really think much bigger. So if I ever seem like I'm doing well, it's highly because of Ben Jorgensen. So, and I really appreciate that Ben has given me the autonomy to run this book of business the way I see fit. And there's times we don't always see eye to eye, but we do more often than not, which is awesome. So thanks, Ben. And
thanks, buddy.
So yeah, you bet, dude. So as far as what Mr. Diggles is in charge of, I manage enterprise, federal, academia, consortia, and partnerships. And I will say that I'm going to brag for a moment because we don't do that enough as a company. I think that we're pretty humble, and we often play the card that we're just happy to be here. But let's be honest, we kick ass, and it comes down to our team. The four of us have the ability to execute as a founding team. Than a team of 40. And I've seen it out of Matthias, I've seen it out of Wyatt, I've seen it out of Bennett, and I've certainly seen it out of myself. And while it has been really hardcore and a lot of work, we're doing it. And we have to protect our time and be very strategic. And that's why that one-to-many moving into 2021 is so important. We can't scale every deal that's going to come our way, because as this percolates and the news continues to spread, and that inbound that's coming towards me of people wanting to involve our technology in their products and applications, we can't satiate all of that demand. So we have to be very proactive about training these system integrators, training these different hosting environment operators on how to utilize our solution and grab and go, all the way down to our relationship with major cloud providers, which I'll be sharing here in the next few weeks, and being part of their marketplace workflow, so that we're an easy service that those that want to deploy a state channel for security around transactions, a very simple use case that doesn't require high configuration, you can deploy that from a marketplace app by just clicking on it and then installing it, and it invokes that API call, and you're off to the races. So the barriers to entry that we can remove to making it as easy as possible to deploy our solution and adoption across those that are showing signs of really wanting it is the name of the game. And we were looking to everybody in this community to help us continually refine that. That said, as we are a small team, we have to place our bets. For example, I'm only putting myself towards 3 consortia next year. I don't have the bandwidth to do research anymore. Like, research is great, but my goal is focused purely on adoption. So if I sit down with a consortia, it's like, great, we want you to join, we want you to do this working group. If it doesn't have a clear plan or a phased approach to true traction and adoption, I'm out. And you'd be surprised how many of them are just hot air. And that's no dig on them. That's great. They have their role, but that's not the Constellation way. We are going to continue to double down on federal with the majority of our efforts. And I say that meaning if I was to sit down and do outbound or development efforts, at least 70% of my time week by week is going to be those federally focused. And the reason why is that their ability, from my experience and those in my peer network, their ability to absorb our solution and commercialize it in short order is vastly more mature than what we're seeing in the commercial space. That said, there are these pockets in the commercial space when I think about that other 30% I'm going to be putting my time towards, or I do put my time towards. And one of the big ones, which we're going to talk more about in Q1 here, is around tax regulation. And the term that I dropped on that Loom video that I put up a little while ago was real-time proof of compliance. And that applies to so many different things. And I know that seems kind of like a buzz term, but let it sit in. If you think about something like a LEED certified building as an example, and this touches on mobility, smart cities, but let's just look at it as raw development. You have a building that's going up and it needs to be LEED certified platinum. And for those that don't know, that's a certification group that certifies buildings based off of their sustainable footprint in the world. And if you're a platinum, that means you followed every different measure to ensure that that has the lowest footprint possible, everything down to gardens up on top of your roof and so forth. That said, is once they certify it, there's no way of knowing if it's actually still compliant, because there's no way to actually audit that data. However, if the IoT sensors and everything that is being measured against on behalf of that compliance measurement is being notarized using a standardized communications protocol, they're able to see real-time proof of compliance all the time, real time. So it changes the narrative from these auditors going from, hey, we're going to go ahead and request an archive, scrub it, find out what's going on, what's not, to them having a real-time situational awareness of what's happening around corruption, what's happening around phishing, spoofing, is any of the data missing, what needs to be penalized or incentivized on that vendor or that participant or constituent's behalf. And so it doesn't matter if it's telecommunications, doesn't matter if it's retail, heck, even ecotourism. If a plane lands in Spain, the moment they touch down, they have to pay Spain taxes based off of them touching on base in their country. And that orchestration of those tax auditors and managing a lot of that stuff is very cumbersome. And right now we're at the table with pretty much with the industry leaders on helping solve this. And there is a arms race to do it. I constantly am talking about how this is a marathon and not a race, and that holds true. And there's times I get frustrated with the community. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I get on and people are asking, when Moon, why doesn't this happen faster, And I simply want to shake those people and be like, have you ever built anything and understand how hard, not only is it just to deploy a mobile app on an iOS device and get people to use it, let alone change the entire landscape of how people are looking at their infrastructure from a decentralized approach. But we're doing it, and it's happening a lot faster, in my opinion, than I thought it would. And so that area is a marathon. We have to keep chugging away at it, which we're doing. And that's why the consistency is key in all of this. That said, there's going to be those moments where we're going to see these pockets start to explode, like miniature hype cycles that mimic the overall blockchain hype cycle we saw in 2018, where these decentralized applications, most of them which failed on ICOs built on Ethereum, are going to start to come back around and start to look at other protocols like Constellation that actually can hit those big data standards, that actually can deliver on the promises without them needing to deploy some wildly new Solidity contract and protocol that none of their developers and core team understand. So as far as academia, that's one of those things that requires a little bit of maturity, but we have two sides to the academia coin. And again, I can't iterate enough that you're going to see some of the names that I'm touching on as far as these entities over the next several weeks. But in academia, the two sides are, one side is, how do we partner closely with universities? And the one that I'm super, of course, bullish about is Portland State University's blockchain certificate program, first and only in the world. I'm the vice chair of that group, and I'm doing a lot of stuff week by week there, but I just don't expose it because it's just not really the right time. That said, I'm working closely with the students to create playbooks so that they can go forth and say, hey, I'm going to work with Moda Health, a major health provider, and educate their team on what blockchain is and what entry points that they can find to utilizing these solutions within their workflow. And so I'm doing that with those students, which is how do we enable them not only to understand what it is this industry does, but how do we get them to start creating entry points that aren't just research, that's not just, again, hooking up two Raspberry Pis and showing that a transaction happened machine to machine. I mean, that's good and all. But then the other side of academia is partnering with them on federal research. I am going to announce an STTR proposal that we did with a university here in short order. And they came to us. They did their due diligence over the last 6 months, and they had a use case that required a very robust, scalable blockchain solution that has been publicly launched and has a mainnet. And that's not a large list. And so they, along with a few other universities, a few that we turned down because of our lack of bandwidth, have come to us to say, hey, we want to partner with you. And that's awesome. Like I said, getting that inbound. So that's another area that we're going to be working with universities strategically, is on the research of deploying our solution within federal opportunities. So looking, I mentioned consortia, I mentioned federal, I mentioned enterprise and academia. And then the last thing I'll touch on is generalized partnerships. So generalized partnerships come in a lot of flavors, and that's why I mentioned the data management providers. They're not the sexy ones. They're not the ones that you hear about like Tesla and PayPal, like I touched on. Those are coming, and we have those relationships. I can get on the phone with anyone, and that's not to brag. It just shows that I have a strong network and I'm good at my job. And so it doesn't matter who it is, I can get on the phone with them, but we want to be ready. And you have bargaining chips when it comes to those calls. And if I get on the phone with the head of business development for, say, PayPal, if I don't have a really tight ask and a lot to show of well thought out, calculated entry points to work together, I'm going to burn that relationship and they're not going to get back on the phone with us. And so this isn't just about getting logos, it's about being strategic. So those general partnerships are going to be things that are around standards, data management tools, and so forth. Some of these names you may not hear of. We also are partnering with emerging solutions, folks that we've met in our ecosystem that have really cool technology that can do stuff that can't be done anywhere else. And these are relationships that we've learned from the federal government, because that's a lot of where a lot of this emerging stuff is living right now. So I'm dedicated to continuing educating everyone as much as I possibly can. Like I said, I apologize that I've been heads down this last 6 months, but it's not because I've been out just lollygagging. I've been working almost too hard. And so that's why this next month, the team is trying to take a little time if possible. And we're going to use that time to take what we've built over this last year and share it with you and start to turn that corner into HGTP 2.0 and start looking at how state channels are really the game changer in this industry. So last thing I'll say is that I often don't talk about the token or exchanges. I tend to be the least crypto person on the team, just because I'm focused on tech. Those that know me, I come from Oracle. I've been in tech for 22 years. But I will say this, and the team always smiles when I say it: crypto is the future. The future is micropayments, and those micropayments are all small jobs that will live as microservices within these state channels. And as we start to wrap our head around how the utility of crypto is going to play a role in those state channels, I think folks are going to realize how special DAG really is. Of course, there's a wonderful community that sees it for what it is now, and we appreciate that you're in it for the long haul for us. But I promise you that we are going to be making sense of how the crypto works in the state channel micropayments, microservices paradigm. Why it's been working hard on and Matthias, of course, on a tokenomics 2.0 paper. I read it just over the last few days, and I'm floored. I'm super excited, mostly because it's just like we keep on running into elements of possibility to scale this thing versus our competitors like an Ethereum that continually are finding roadblocks to their transactional throughput. God bless them for what they did, but now that that thing is out, it's tough for them to kind of reconfigure it to meet the standards of what the true market needs. So I think this is a good, I've been talking pretty much nonstop for 35 minutes, but I'm gonna go ahead and pause. Elise, how are we doing so far? Is there anything else you want me to expand